Hello, beautiful people. My name is Emma.
And I'm MC.
And we're your hosts of the G Forces podcast. So, this past weekend was the Italian Grand Prix in Monza, Italy. And it was definitely, this whole season's kind of like one for the history books, I think. But this race in particular was pretty good.
I definitely think it's one that, like, the season overall is going to be one that we're talking about for a while.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think, I don't know. It seems like controlled chaos. Like, it almost seems like we are surprised, but not really surprised by a lot of the outcomes that are happening. I think that there are some people that are more surprising than others. But yeah, I think it's been overwhelming how up and down the season has been.
I never know who's going to win a race going into it.
Yeah.
Like, I go in thinking that one person's going to win, and they end up coming in, like, third or even fifth sometimes.
And I almost feel like quali is, like, such a tease. Like, you think it's going to go one way, you're confident, and then it doesn't go that way at all.
The start, I think, makes or breaks, and then this year, I think tire strategy has been the biggest thing.
Yeah. I don't know. It's always a surprise at the end and the beginning of every weekend.
Oh, 100%. Well, I don't have any news to update on until the end of us going over everything. Do you have anything? Or I think we can just get right into it.
No, I think the only thing was the announcement during the weekend, but I think we'll get into that at FP2. The Mercedes announcement?
Yes, yeah. FP2.
Other than that, I feel like
no, FP3.
Yeah, FP3
later.
Yeah, I feel like there's just so much drama around the race outcome right now that there's no like actual news. We're also going into a 2-week. We don't have a Grand Prix this week coming up weekend. So
did anybody else realize that there's another month-long break in the calendar?
What?
Yeah, like the whole month of October, there's no races. From like late September to late October.
I'm not mad about that. We're like kind of busy.
Yeah.
But also, like, why is no one talking about that? How many weeks? Like 3 weeks?
It's like another 3-4 weeks.
Maybe it's just the way the schedule works. I mean, the schedule
That's why the season ends like at the beginning of December.
Well, yeah, because the schedule goes after American Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And I feel like last year ended right like on American Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So this schedule is going long. I mean, it's the longest to record.
Yeah, 24 races.
Yeah. Crazy.
All right. We are going to get into it.
So I realized we didn't even tell you guys when we started this off a second ago. We didn't even tell you guys where we're at. So
I said Monza.
Oh, I didn't hear it. I didn't catch you. Sorry.
I said Monza, Italy. I don't know if that's technically the city. I think it is. Yeah, Monza is the city because it's a small little village. Not too far from Milan.
Okay. So this past weekend was the 2024 Italian Grand Prix in Monza because there's two. The official race name this weekend was the Formula 1 Pirelli Gran Premio d'Italia 2024. The circuit name is the Autodromo Nazionale Monza, and I believe they talk about it last year and they talk about it this year. I believe it was like, it used to be when Italy was like a kingdom, it used to be an old estate for royalty or some noble or whatever. So like the grounds where the track is used to be like, I think, hunting grounds for this like rich noble family. Little fun fact. The first Grand Prix was in the debut year in 1950, and then the circuit length is 5.793 kilometers. The number of laps that they did was 53, and then the race distance was 306.72 kilometers in total. There were 11 turns at this track, and the fastest lap, which is still in place today, was placed by Rubens Barrichello in a Ferrari in 2004, and he did a lap in 1:21.046 seconds. There are 2 DRS detection zones this weekend. So DRS detection zone 1 started right before turn 7 and activation began right after turn 7. And then DRS detection zone 2 is right after turn 11 and activation begins a little farther up in like the start finish straight, kind of what we see every weekend. Some things going into the weekend that I didn't know that we were told when we started watching practice was that the track was newly paved, and this is actually kind of like a bigger deal than
A
anyone
total shit show.
like. So Monza is known, for those that are new, Monza is known as the Temple of Speed. If you go back to our last episode, Emma kind of talks a little bit about like the dangers and like the way the speed can be from one of the past races. But Monza is known as like the House of Speed. It is a historical track. Everyone loves it. I think it used to be more of like it was never like a black track before. It was a lighter color. And then of course,
I
like
think they not only repaved it, but I think they painted it too.
I don't know if they painted it, but all I know is that it was a darker color than the track typically historically has been, which in turn made the track significantly hotter, which was not something that people were expecting because historically at Monza, tire deg is not a huge issue.
Which I find to be surprising because it's summer in Italy and it's not exactly cold.
It's not. I was there.
No, it's not.
I was not at Monza. Like, I've been in Italy in the summer. It's very hot. And
Yeah.
so, well, the thing is, too, it was like, I mean, the States were in a heat wave. I mean, we were like over 100 like the
Yeah.
past week. I know from what I've read, Europe went into a heat wave. So, like, it's hot in Italy, but like, I don't think it's not historically like this hot. Like,
Yeah.
and so I think when we started practice, like, the track temperatures were at like over 100, which, you know, it's insane. But yeah, so essentially the new track became a new factor that I don't think a ton of the teams, if any, were really expecting. And I think it was a huge impact on.
I mean, when you see a track redone, repaved, it's always going to be a little bit more slippery than it was before, but I think it was worse than it has been in the past. Luckily, they had F2
support.
and F3.
Yeah, thank God they had support
to
series.
lay some rubber down, because if they didn't, they would have been sliding all over the place.
Yeah.
But anyways, continue telling us about Monza.
That was really it.
Oh.
Yeah, it is another one where a lot of the turns, if not all of them, have names. Unfortunately, I don't know them. Sorry. We'll get to that next year. But
there's the Alberto Ascari chicane.
The Alberto Ascari, the Lesbo,
It's Lesmo.
Lesmo.
The whole weekend, we thought they were saying Lesbo,
and I was
confidently like the lesbians' turn.
Yeah, they're just so
really
progressive.
Progressive for Europe, for a Catholic country.
Well, and our like dumb American brains are like hearing the Brits accent. We're like the Lesbo. So, anyways,
it's the Lesmos.
And so don't confidently say Lesbo like I just did.
Yeah, Lesmos. It's with an M. And then the Parabolica is the final turn.
Parabolica.
And then there's that first chicane, which I don't think that one has a name. It might have a name, but I don't really know what that is. It's got a good chunk of straights.
But yeah.
Yeah.
I do have some pre-FP1 buzz, but we'll get to that. Oh, okay, so...
Or do you want to go over in a second?
We'll go into it in a second. We'll do the little, like, transition here. Wow, beautiful transition. Okay.
That was so amazing.
It was like magic. Okay, so the biggest buzz before the beginning of practice surrounded Kimi Antonelli. So I feel like we've said this so many times this weekend. Kimi Antonelli is the spotlight of Mercedes, or Mercedes, as Davide says.
I love Davide is the best part about the Italian weekends. I love it so much. Anyways.
So, for those that have been living under a rock, Mercedes, as of FP1 from this weekend, had a second seat that they needed to fill because Sir Lewis is going to Ferrari. And so...
Well, the entire season they've
The entire season, yes, I know that.
Oh, I thought you said as of FP1. I'm like, no.
No, I'm saying so as of FP1 because they don't have a second seat anymore.
Yeah.
They filled it. Spoiler alert. So
guess who?
The biggest buzz was around Kimi Antonelli because he's been kind of like that buzz name for He's really only been the only name for Mercedes. And so it was announced that he was going to be practicing in George's car, and this was honestly like had everyone buzzing because not only was Kimi in it, but also this was the debut of Williams' new driver, Franco Colapinto.
Well, and normally when you do a rookie session, there's a few different races that tend to be the ones that are the rookie session races. And Monza is not one of them. And so
Yeah.
for him to have an FP1 session, it was essentially his F1 debut in front of his home crowd because he is Italian. And so they were making it this whole big thing. And by that, we all knew that he was going to be announced for the second seat for Mercedes, which after FP2, before FP3, spoiler, he was announced as the second seat. So,
Yeah.
but I don't know how George feels about his new teammate as of right now.
So FP1 starts off normal, Franco goes out,
Hot as
Kimi
hell.
goes out, hot as hell.
Fernando goes out.
Kimi does his first fast lap and he comes in
P1.
second. No,
That's what the report said.
was it P1?
Yeah, jumps to
But
P1.
then I think
somebody else must have gone
Lewis
faster.
came in faster than him, but everyone was like, "Look at him, 1 lap pace. That's insane." Which it really was. Like it was an incredible feat. But then lap 2.
Lap 2, man.
10 minutes in, Kimi Antonelli was running his second lap and went off the track around the Parabolica, going into the barrier quite hard.
Apparently it was between 46 and 52 Gs he crashed. It was not a good, it was a bad crash. It wasn't bad.
46. I thought they were in like lower counts, like 4 Gs, 5 Gs.
No.
Oh.
You feel 4 Gs when you're on a roller coaster.
Okay. Anyways, but it was really hard. And
yeah, it shook the tire wall.
He came out, his radio message was clearly the radio message of someone who knew they'd mess up. And very quickly, Toto was like, "It's all right. It's all right." George had to swallow his feelings.
Dropped. And he stomped on out of there, which I understand.
It was funny because there was a quote after, because immediately after the crash happened, it very quickly became, how is Mercedes going to look at Kimi? How is the team going to look at him? Like, is the garage going to be like
this is the end of his career?
And they literally said at one point, they were like, "This is the origin of the villain story." And it's like,
sometimes I love the media, but also sometimes y'all need to shut up.
I'm like, how many times have we seen?
Can we just watch
some of the best drivers in the world either
crash?
They're like crash or their engine fail or they hit the gravel? Like, granted, etiquette wise, when it comes to not being in your own car, I think it's one of those things you don't really
typically
push
you
the
don't.
limits.
Yeah, you don't.
You just kind of do it to get the time and the track. And Toto was quoted after in a press conference stating, "The problem with Kimi is not telling him how to speed up or quicken the pace. It's telling
him
Kimi
to
slow down." So I think we have a lot of speed on our hands, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is a bit of a rough-edged kind of driver. Mercedes is gonna mold, but I think the immediate jump to villaincy is not really.
I love the media. Watching F1 TV is like so exciting for me. I love commentary. If I watch a race or any session without commentary, I feel empty inside. But sometimes I'm like, please stop talking because everything you're saying is annoying me and it's taking away from the actual like racing content right now. Like, I'm not going to say who in particular.
Yeah.
You all probably have heard me say it before, who bothers me, but
I think too, it's kind of just remembering the little amount of time that so many of non-F1 drivers are given in cars.
Yeah.
And understanding like the level of inexperience like most of anyone is going to have. I mean, I have to say, and I want to just say this from the get-go, I think Kimi's crash we would have seen at one point or another from any rookie. I think it's going to happen at the beginning of next season.
I think it's surprising that we haven't seen any rookies over the last like 2-3 years crash like that.
Well, Logan.
Okay, yes, that's true, but still, completely different situation. Yeah, but Mick is also a different situation.
Okay. I also just wanted to commend Franco Colapinto's
Go off,
entire
Franco.
weekend,
Go off.
because
It was kind of
the
slay.
the media was, in my opinion,
Very negative.
no, I think it was expected, the negativity. I think that the media, because, okay, here's my conspiracy theory. The way social media drives this sport these days, the pundits and the media make these personalities characters. All of them have
Yeah.
tied fan groups, all of them have tied fans. Like, there's a buildup of amount of just like support that each of these
Yeah.
drivers have. And I think dropping a driver this late in the race, this late in the season, like, messes up the whole vibe, the whole like
Yeah.
brand. And so I think no matter who it would have been in Logan's seat, there would have been flaws. They would have had something negative to say. And I feel like with Franco, he's
Very calm and collected.
he's with the level of media attention he's received, I think you see very similar, um almost like diamond in the rough energy that like Liam Lawson gives, where it's like
Yes.
these kids that just like, they're finally excited to be in the seat. They just want to talk about the sport. They want to be excited to be there.
They want to get as
Obviously, it
many.
wasn't the most kosher way that they received the seat,
No.
but I think Franco Calapinto's debut for this weekend was great. I think even Kimmy showing that one lap speed had
It
to
was
get
good.
it had to get Mercedes fans excited.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
So, yeah, but that's really all I have on FP1. Sorry for that very long ramble.
Just a few things quickly. So, Checo had a precautionary gearbox change before FP1. And then nope, actually no, that was FP2. Sorry, looking at a wrong thing. Bottas at one point during FP1 did end up in P1 at one point, which is pretty cool for Bottas. And then people at first were like, "Oh, Kimi Antonelli, like his crash, blah blah blah, like he's the worst." But like every driver was
Multiple
having,
driver kept having
like
gravel
Carlos in
issues.
FP1 had a snap and was like, "Ooh, that was a close one."
I think you also saw Kimi Antonelli trying to push it on a track that none of the drivers had driven on before. It was
Well, and I think
Brandley.
they've all driven on the track before, but not the newly repaved
Yeah.
bit. And so for him, it's like this is a track I know. I
Yeah.
know what I'm doing here, and I don't think he was expecting how slippery it was because also F2, I don't think typically, I think F2 on the weekend drives after F1 for stuff.
Yeah.
So like FP1, I think that's F2 hasn't even driven yet. And he didn't have an F3 season because he went from Freca straight up to F2. So he's never had to drive on a straight, like, blank track like that that had just been repaved.
Well, and I think it goes to show like how many of them did slip. Like how many of them after the Antonelli, like,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So,
Anyways, FP2. So George, he actually ended up being able to go out a couple of minutes into the session, which was surprising, but he ended up being able to go out.
that was also when it was announced that Checo had a gearbox change.
Yeah.
And so George and Checo both were held up like for the first 10 minutes of the session. But then they were finally able to join.
About halfway through, K-Mag actually crashed into the barriers at the second Lesmo, not Lesbo. The team had already had a fine for impeding in FP1, so did not add any more great things to their plate. Haas had a
Haas has had a rough like
couple of
14
races.
days.
Yeah, 14
Like the
days,
last
not
2
couple of
weeks
races.
have been
It'll be fine though.
intense.
They'll figure it
Yeah.
out. And a lot of this was just used for quali runs. Honestly, nothing crazy.
Yeah.
You have anything else?
No, not really.
And then FP3. Well, FP2 was also a good showing for both state cars. And then we get to FP3, and that was a good showing for Williams, which was great. Both Franco and Alex were in the top 10.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Honestly, my note says after the excitement of the day before, there was honestly a bit of a slowdown in terms of drama.
yeah. I think people needed it.
I think the only thing that I noted was that Max had a huge amount of complaints about turning of the car. I don't
You
know if
can
you caught
see.
that.
You can
No, I
see.
know. And I want to talk. Did you see Checo's comment at the end of the race?
No, what did he say?
Okay, I'll bring it up at the end of the race. Remind me, because
Okay.
I want to talk about it. Because I actually think it's this moment where I'm like, oh, Checo.
What is it like? I've been telling you about these problems for months, and now you're finally listening because Max is saying it.
Maybe.
Now I feel even worse, honestly, for hating on Checo for a minute because like these things come to light, and I'm just like, damn it.
We'll talk about it. I actually like my heart broke for him in that interview because it is, and there's a few dichotomies that I want to talk about, like focus on where the media's negativity is focused and where I think less people are looking at, but
Yeah.
we'll talk about it in a sec.
Okay. We are gonna go into quali.
At the top of Q1, it was said that K-Mag had to replace a gearbox. So we're just, doggy piling on the K-Mag Haas
Well, yeah, because
issues.
his car stalled on track right after the checkered flag of FP3.
Yeah.
So he kind of had to do that. Which actually, one of the other big reasons why Kimmy's crash was such a big deal was because
Hey,
George
George.
had just replaced like everything inside the car. So it was kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
So yeah. What was it? Okay, Q1. We see both Saubers, steak, Sauber, kick, whatever you want to call it, out, unfortunately. And then we end up seeing Franco out. I think he was on a really good lap for his second lap, but then he ended up brushing the gravel a little bit.
Yeah, he had to pull out. Well,
And
no, like he finished, but he didn't get
he didn't have enough time to make it back around for another hot lap. So, yeah, he ended up in P18. Lance Stroll was P17 and Yuki was P16. Do you have any comments on Q1?
Lance Stroll. I say this every week, which is why I shouldn't, but I forget about you, bro.
I
I'm
haven't seen him
sorry.
in an interview,
I
I
haven't
feel
seen
like,
him in an
in
interview.
months.
I think I forgot the sound of his voice. I don't even know, like, if he has an accent anymore. Like, the guy is just there,
It's gotten to
existing.
the point where I think Fernando's even given up because Fernando made a comment about a result in the race, which I'll mention after.
I think for me, I'm just, yeah. The only takeaway I have from Q1 was, like, what is Lance is still here.
Yeah.
So, other than that, I was kind of happy to see a decent run from Franco, especially on his first quali, but
I think he could have made it
I
to
do think he could
Q2.
have made it to Q2, and I think he expected a better result. So,
I think he was
hopefully,
hard on himself for it too.
yeah.
I think if he had made it to Q2, I think he would have gotten points on debut.
Yeah.
Anyways, Q2. We see both Alpines out. We see K-Mag out. Danny Rick and our boy Fernando.
I'm going to be honest with you guys because we're giving like the worst rundown of qualifying I think we've ever given.
I'm so sorry.
So tame. It was
I was half
not
asleep.
It was also it's pretty quiet.
Nothing crazy was
Nothing
going
crazy
on.
happened, like, and I'm not saying that that's what like drives our commentary, but like it was just a clean quali. That's
There was
really
nothing
it.
going on.
Nothing really crazy happened. And I feel like the results kind of speak for themselves. Like, we typically see both Saubers at the bottom. There's always a Williams and always, like, a V carb. And then I feel
Yeah.
like Q2, we always see, the V carbs, the Haas's, the Alpines.
Yeah.
Like, sorry, guys.
It's not anything new. Nothing crazy is happening.
Yeah.
And even same with Q3.
Q3, there's
nothing crazy is happening.
The only thing I noticed was that apparently when I was reading, the top 6 cars were separated by less than 0.2 of a second.
Mm.
So that's how tight the times were.
I didn't realize it was that tight, to be honest.
I didn't either, so I gotta fact check that one.
So Q3, we have Lando on pole, Oscar P2, George Russell P3, which doesn't last very long. Charles Leclerc in P4, Carlos Sainz in P5, Lewis Hamilton P6, Max Verstappen P7, Checo Perez in P8, Alex Albon P9, and Hulkenberg P10. a pretty typical order. Nothing crazy.
Max.
Max is a little bit out of place, but not by much as of recently, to be honest.
I do think it's interesting how at this point you see how similar Max and Checo's performance is. Like, there's a lot of similarities in terms of, like, what they can get out of the car, and I think it's interesting that kind of, like, the Max magic has run out. That,
I
like,
don't know where it was coming from at the beginning of the season and last season.
like,
but
how
then
he was
now-
able to just, like, so far outperform Checo, and now he's right there with
can't.
his team. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another happy surprise is Alex Albon getting up in
Mhm.
Q3. I feel like, again, it was a bit of a tense ride for Williams at the beginning of this week. There was a weird comment made by James Vowles about
Which he
the
then quickly
specialness
apologized.
of Mick Schumacher and Logan Sargent, and I think the dude must be so freaking emotionally spent with everything he's had to do as, like, a leader of a team, I'm sure.
Which I know most people right now are like, James is in his villain era.
He's
like,
horrible. He
James
doesn't care
Vowles, when
about
I see you, it's
anyone.
on site, like that kind of stuff. But to be honest, he's one of the first team principals who I feel like has come and
Who's
apologized
backtracked
for
so
something that they've
fast.
said. It was within like a few hours. It was in like an hour
It
or
was
two.
to the point that he went on into F1 TV to apologize and to clarify. I don't know if he technically apologized, but he clarified what he said. And F1 TV was like,
No, he did. He said he apologized. And he said
Thanks,
he reached out to Mick himself.
yeah, because I think at the end of the day, there's more people on the grid. I have to believe, as someone who's never been on the grid herself, I have to believe that there are more people who just care about the sport and the well-being of the sport.
Yeah.
You know, I think that there are certain villains on the grid that will sit there and they'll shove their drama to the side so you forget about it forever. But then I think that there are people like James Vowles who it's like, I'm going to own up to what I said and say that I said it wrong.
Yeah.
And I think it's refreshing. I think, you know, it's the way you have to, in this gossip-worthy sport, you have to just clear the air.
Yeah.
So,
I'd rather that than what happened at the beginning of the season.
yeah. But, I think it was a pretty good performance from Alex. With all that being said, I think, you know, Williams has always done pretty decent at Monza.
But this year in particular, their car, compared to last year, has just not been as fast.
Yeah.
So it's always good to see them perform well because I think they really need it.
Yeah. We love Williams. I don't have anything else for quality, do you?
Nope, we can get into the race now.
Okay. Did you know that there was a slight risk of rain for the race?
I read that in the race report, and I couldn't have told you from looking
I
at the
remember
sky
them
during the race.
talking. I remember them talking about it at the beginning of the race, and they were like 40% chance of rain, and I was like, "What?"
It's blue skies, guys.
It's yeah. From where?
The sun is out.
Yeah, it was hot as shit again. Which I think
Shocker.
had everyone stressed about their tires. So
Yeah. So we have everybody starts on mediums except for a few started on hards. So Max, what is this? Checo, Esteban, Yuki, Lance, and Valtteri all started on hards. We didn't see softs on anyone at any point throughout the entire race.
you're sure?
I don't remember anybody having softs on. I think the softs would have been destroyed.
I honestly can't remember.
I don't remember seeing softs. And I had a decent night's sleep the night
It was
before.
mostly hard and mediums.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, let's start. Like we've been saying, Lando has not been good at starts. I think he really thought that he had the start this time. And he did. He came out and cut Oscar off, which was great for him. Oscar got a little smushed by George, skirts around on the outside of Lando, and then pushes George off track. It's a start.
Well, and George in turn had a lockup.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not like it was like an issue or anything. That's just you gotta go where there's a space. And then we get around to like the next chicane. I think it was the Ascari
It was
chicane.
the second chicane, yeah.
And we see Oscar pass Lando in one of like the moves of the season, basically.
It
People were
was
like, you don't pass here, and Oscar just did.
it was the perfect squeeze.
And they didn't touch. They got close, but they didn't touch.
And you could definitely tell Lando was like,
Lando was
whoa.
shook.
Like, hello.
Lando had no idea that was coming. Neither did any of us, to be honest. And this was the beginning of no, I think it really started several races ago. Everybody just wants McLaren to prioritize Lando.
I think when you look at the driver standing points, the obvious, I mean, isn't what every team wants is to have drivers championship and constructors championship all within the same season. So I had a really, really hard time, and I'm still kind of having a hard time as a new fan to really understand the like deep anger that a lot of people are feeling right now towards McLaren. But I think it has to do with like basically the points right now with the world driver standing is how close Charles Leclerc is. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think I realized how close he was, and basically just the fact that like
I think he's just as close to Lando as Lando is to
Lando
Max.
is to Max, and I think for me and for a lot of people the focus was on like Max and Lando, and I think now that Charles is like coming for them,
Yeah.
I think all of a sudden people are starting to realize that this is not as easy as Lando just passing Max anymore. I think that there's another player on the field, and people are all of a sudden like, holy shit.
Well, and we'll get into this in our final
Yeah.
thoughts because we have a lot to say about that. So when Oscar passes Lando, Charles takes this as he takes advantage of this situation and ends up also passing Lando. So now the order of the race is Oscar, Charles, Lando, and Lando started on pole. And yet again, Lando does not finish the first lap of the race in the lead when he starts on pole. I just don't think that pole is his position. I don't think he needs it. I think he does better when he starts elsewhere.
Yeah. I don't know if it's like he gets, but it's weird. It's like the second Charles passed him and all of a sudden Lando settled into third, it was like that was it. It was, and it's something we've spoken about. The McLaren doesn't do well in dirty air. No car does, but the McLaren flies in clean air.
Yeah, that's why
And
Oscar was walking away from Charles and
Lando
Lando
was
just stuck.
And it's not the first time we've seen it. Just
But it's also not the first time that
reversed.
we've seen where Lando takes too long to pass someone when he should be passing them
Yeah.
faster.
Yeah.
Okay. During all of this chaos, we actually see Hulk get squeezed by Danny Rick, and he also had an incident with Yuki and actually caused Yuki to end up retiring. Yuki ended up retiring.
So Yuki was the victim of the Danny Hulk contact and unfortunately retired the car.
Yeah.
I think it was like around lap 8-ish.
Yeah.
And then
But at lap 6, Hulk went into the pits to get a new front wing and hard tires because of both of those collisions. Lap 8 was when Oscar was in the lead by a full second at that point.
Yeah, and Hulk, so Danny was given 5-second penalty, and then Hulk was also given a 10-second penalty because of this contact between the two of them. I don't know if they were both like given at the same time. But then George, who had received, and it was never like confirmed in that first corner when George was in third and he locked up, he had to go to the escape road.
DC was like, I think there's some damage on the front
There
wing.
There was damage. I think his right front wing was damaged. It was like falling off.
It was the end plate.
It was the end plate. And when I watched the clip again, I cannot for the life of me figure out what he hit, like what he clipped. If it was Oscar, because I don't think Oscar sustained damage unless it was just like.
I have a feeling it was like one of the barriers.
I don't think so though. But yeah, so if anyone knows, let us know what.
But lap
George
12,
hit.
George goes into the pits for a new front wing and hards. You had several people on their radios being like, George has a lot of damage, like this is really unsafe. So eventually he has to go in, and he was slowing down significantly, so he had to go do that. He ended up coming back out in 16th place, starting P3. George was obviously in pain. Lap 14, we see Oscar with a 3-second lead ahead of Charles Leclerc.
A little more than 3 seconds at this point.
Yeah, and Lando was right behind Charles and having a hard time passing him. So Lando actually ended up going into the pit so that he could get new tires and undercut Charles. And Ferrari kind of fell for it and called Charles in for new tires on the next lap. And Charles came in to the back onto the track right behind Lando. So it was an effective call
It
for
was a
McLaren.
beautiful undercut. It
Yeah,
was
but I also
perfect.
understand why Charles was like, if they were trying to undercut us, why did you call me in? My tires were fine. I
And
understood that frustration.
I understood that frustration, and I thought that frustration would be the downfall of it, and how it was wrong.
Yeah,
How it was
tire
so
whisperer.
wrong.
Um, okay, Oscar did not pit until lap 17, and he came out still ahead of Lando. So great for Oscar. We see now Danny end up getting a 10-second penalty because he had a failure to
This
serve the penalty
was
correctly. Horrible.
understandably, but so tough.
I almost was like
10
watching it.
seconds? It couldn't have been 2.
It
Like,
was a
you
bit
couldn't have
ridiculous.
given a second. And I just feel bad for those that didn't know, just really quickly, long story short, when Danny went to go do his first time penalty, none of the pit crew are allowed to touch the car until that time penalty has been served. Unfortunately, one of the front wing guys, as the car was coming out, freaking muscle memory, people. Pavlov's dog is what we all are. He unfortunately put his hands out, went to go touch the car, and quickly pulled them away. Like, you could see the recognition of, oh shit, I can't touch this. Well, the freaking FIA, like the consistent queens that they are, were like, we're gonna find this. And they freaking gave a 10-second penalty, which at the end of the day, yes, they need to be consistent and they need to call it for what it is. So if this happened to any other team, the hopes would be that they would do it as well. But I don't know. It just seemed like there was no advantage. The guy messed up. Like, maybe the wind pushed him. Maybe he was catching his balance. But anyways.
Okay, lap 20, we see Carlos Sainz pit from the lead because at this point he was in the lead, and this left the Red Bulls in a 1-2. So we had, who was it? Max in P1 and Checo in P2. And this was when Lando was told on the radio about papaya rules. He could race Oscar, but to remember papaya rules.
And
Whatever the hell that means.
Everyone watching going, what the flying fuck are papaya rules?
Now, this is what has everyone's panties in a wad.
Yeah, this is like the beginning of like the frustration, because I think essentially another side of people's frustrations is that this should not be let up to the drivers.
They should not be allowed to race each other.
There are certain hardcore decisions that historically the teams have just made and decided in the past, and for some reason McLaren is sitting here and they're giving the ability to their drivers to make the decision, which is incredibly, from the outside looking in, it's incredibly uncomfortable for those two men to sit there and have to do that for your teammate, your colleague, your pal,
People
say.
think that because Mark Webber is Oscar's manager, that it might be a part of his contract that team orders are not allowed.
Yeah, that was something Will Buxton was throwing around. Obviously, he knows more about Mark Webber than I do. Like, I don't know much about the man.
Will Buxton was like, with Mark Webber being his manager, maybe there's a clause in there. There's no such thing as a number one driver. I don't think that would be part of the clause. I think that the no team orders could be a thing, and let the drivers figure it out on their own. I could see that being part of Oscar's contract.
Yeah, it's
because then the drivers decide who's number one by themselves.
Yeah. When asked about papaya rules post the race, Zach Brown just kind of simply put it as clean racing against one's teammate and less like team orders, basically being like, don't hit each other, but you guys can race. But like, I don't know. It doesn't really seem like
strategically for the Constructors' Championship even, it makes it a little risky because who knows if they're going to accidentally crash into each other and then you'd lose all of the points for that entire weekend for the championship.
I also just feel like we're at a point, the biggest thing that has kind of made me to come to the understanding of the anger is the fact that it could be the only chance McLaren has for this. And for them to sit there and be a little willy-nilly, in my opinion, about it, to not have like at this point, you have to have an overarching team strategy for the rest of the season. And sometimes it just feels like they're going race by race. Like, they're not realizing
are.
how many days there are left. And I think that is the biggest issue in my eyes, is the fact that,
Yeah.
like, you are looking at it, you have the season too siloed.
Yeah.
But
So now at this point we have K-Mag get a 10-second penalty because so basically he was trying to make a move on the inside of Pierre Gasly into one of the turns and he ended up locking up, which then caused a collision between him and Pierre. So he got a 10-second penalty, which is 2 points on his super license.
which
So now he
brings
has
that total
12,
to 12.
which means he officially has a race ban. Apparently, though, once you have the race ban, the 12 disappear.
That's nice. Someone confirm that. One of you guys.
I should have confirmed that before this.
Oh my god.
but
There's always someone is going to confirm.
Yeah,
We
if
believe
someone
in
wants
you.
to put in the comments on our podcast.
Yeah, there's
or
on
our
YouTube. There's a
YouTube.
few people that are always telling us yeah. You know who you are. Let us know. Do they just clear out?
Anyways, the Red Bulls finally pit and they end up coming out P6 and P8. Lap 29, we have the order of people in the race. The top few is Oscar, Lando, Charles, Carlos, and Lewis. Lewis is always just like secretly randomly in there.
He's always like fifth.
Always fifth.
Always fifth.
Which, hey, not a bad place to be.
Consistency is key, my guy.
1000%. Lando locks up.
And this was,
yeah, okay. So the big problem with the McLarens was the front left tire. And the reason why the Ferraris were not having issues with their front left tires, not Carlos, Charles was not having a problem. They actually showed a video. I think it was Sam Collins showed a video of, or it might have been Martin Brundle. Not Martin Brundle. His son. Is it Alex Brundle? Showed a video of the way that Charles was steering to literally release some of the pressure from the front left tire so that it wouldn't degrade as fast.
Charles, why does it take you to Monza and Monaco to do these things? You could do these things all the time. You can do it. We've seen you do it.
We have. But
Why
anyway,
is it only one every 10 races?
These are the most important ones for him.
Yeah.
So he literally was using his experience to work his tires the best that he could, and he did. And because of Lando's, not lack of experience, but I think Lando's not as good with tires as Charles is. That's why Lando locked up. Charles got a lot closer to Lando, and obviously ended up passing Lando at some point.
So lap 33, because of this, in the early 30s of the race, you started to see the McLarens. This is when the panic set in. Lap 33, Lando pits with fresh hards. And when Lando pitted, he came out right around Max, which at this point, a lot of people were even contemplating this gap, if McLaren was really looking at the bigger picture. I mean, I don't know how these engineer briefs or how fast this information is moving, but basically when Max asked his team what they would prefer him to do when it came to Lando, they just stated race him. So at this point, you have
that Max is trying to mess with
Lando, because at this point Max knows he's not going to come out in first, so he's like, I'm just going to mess around.
Let's try and get Lando have as little points as possible.
And you have Charles steering it like God kissed his steering wheel, and then you have Oscar who's just sitting there trying to perform the way he needs his car to perform. So
lap 39.
No. So then Oscar was asked if he thinks he could make the race a one stop, but he basically said that he was starting to feel the deg, and he was like, I don't know if we can get to 50, the final lap. So
lap 39, we see Oscar go into the pit, and he comes out P3. And he basically just has to pass Carlos to then get to Charles.
There is over an 11-second gap between Carlos and Charles at this point.
Every single lap, Oscar is going 1.2 seconds faster than Charles.
So they were doing the math in the pundit box, and apparently they said he had to do 1.5 seconds or higher in order to pass Charles.
He was doing that for the first bit.
He was doing it for the first bit,
His fight trying to pass Carlos is what screwed him.
Carlos is what screwed him. So he had to get past Carlos. I think there was like 4 or 5 seconds between him and Carlos. He got past Carlos, and then he only had like 7 laps to get to Charles. And I think something that people are not focusing on is, understandably, because Oscar was in new tires, I would expect nothing but this. But like the amount of time he ate through.
Oh yeah.
Like, I know we've said this before when it comes to like these races, but if he had 2 more laps,
no, but that's actually true though. If he had a few more laps, he probably would
he
have.
probably would have won, but
Which is the story of this entire season.
yeah.
Lap 41, we see Lando pass Max finally, but that took him I don't know, 6, 7 laps to pass him.
Yeah.
Not great. Lap 45 is when we see Oscar finally pass Carlos, and then actually soon after, Lando did as well. Oscar was only about 2 seconds away from Charles in the end. But then Charles obviously won, which was a huge thing. Obviously you always want to see a Ferrari win at Monza. I was sad McLaren didn't win, but if McLaren wasn't going to win, I wanted a Ferrari to win at Monza.
Yeah, I think the fact that it was a Monza Monaco season for Charles so far has been kind of special to watch, as someone who's not the biggest, I mean, I'm not anti-Ferrari, but like they're just not the team that I follow as closely. And so I feel like for the Tifosi, for Ferrari,
For
Fred Vasseur, but also like even just the fact like, yeah, it wasn't Carlos's win, but I think to sit there and kind of be a part of those celebrations, being a part of the Ferrari family, like it hits a little different.
And Carlos was like, I hope that me kind of fighting Oscar a little bit was able to give Charles some more time so that Charles can win, because he was like, if I'm not going to win, like if I'm not on the podium, yeah, that sucks, but I just want to see Charles win this race.
Yeah. I think it was this weird moment when the race ended where I think F1 fans were kind of stumped into what they just watched, because the one stop from Ferrari was never expected in a million years.
Nobody saw that one coming.
And I think
technically most of the time you're going to do a one stop in Monza, but because of how hot it was,
the tire
nobody
day,
was able to do that.
Yeah, it was a weird one.
It was.
So
Oscar got second, obviously. Lando got third.
So we'll go through. So Oscar was able to cut the gap by the end of the race. So he's able to cut those 11-second difference into, there was only 2.6 seconds between him and Charles at the end of the race. So Charles Leclerc came in first. Oscar came in second. Lando came in third. Carlos came in fourth. Lewis came in fifth. Max came in sixth. George came in seventh. Checo eighth. Alex Albon in ninth. Kevin Magnussen in 10th. Fernando Alonso in 11th. Franco Colapinto came out in 12th, which,
Fernando did say afterwards that if he had known that it was Franco in 12th behind him, that he would have slowed down to let him pass so that he could have a higher result in his debut.
Oh,
Fernando.
Oh my God.
Man of my heart.
After that was 13th was Danny, 14th was Esteban, 15th was Pierre, 16th was Valtteri, 17th was Nico, 18th was Zhou, 19th was Lance, and then Yuki Tsunoda did not finish this race. The fastest lap was scored by Lando Norris, so he got that additional point.
Like the last lap.
In the last lap, and he did it in 1:21.432 seconds. So Barrichello's Ruben's
still fighting.
Record is from 2004, still fighting. I think, yeah, that's all I really have to say about the race. I feel like there's so many final thoughts I have. That's why I'm like...
We're going to go into our final thoughts now. All right, you start.
All right, so one thing I just wanted to say before we get into all the drama llama. So currently in terms of driver standings, Red Bull is standing at first with 446 points. McLaren is in second at 438, and Ferrari is in third with 407. I'm going to be honest. Ferrari just came out of nowhere. Ferrari came like a shark And
Ferrari had a great beginning of the season. They've had a lull in the middle.
they've had a middle.
And then
And now they're doing...
Well, okay. They bring upgrades specific to Monza. I don't know if this will continue.
Well, yeah. In terms of final thoughts, I feel like I'm still struggling to understand the, like, deep anger.
So I'm not deeply angry like some people are.
Or, like, the heightened emotion. And maybe this just makes me a really bad fan.
No, I think okay, so some of the conversations I've seen online is that people are like, Zach Brown is obviously a Lando fan and Andrea Stella is obviously an Oscar fan, and so they're at like they're butting heads there on like who should be the number one driver, blah blah blah. I don't think that's it.
I don't think that's at all.
No, I understand where Will Buxton is coming from. I think Will's whole rant on F1 TV was aggressive.
Oh my god, I actually loved the tone of it though, because like it was like the
It was very passionate.
It felt like a fan, like it actually like...
Yeah, because he was expressing the frustration of like I don't understand what they've been doing for the last few races because it makes no sense. When it in reality, okay, I understand the frustration of like why aren't they making a call, because you don't know if you're 100% going to win the Constructors' Championship, which is the most important thing, really, at the end of the day, for the team. Yeah, drivers is cool, but Constructors is the most important thing. So you cannot be allowing your drivers to really race each other if there's a potential that they could crash. And also, you don't know if you're ever going to get this chance again as a driver to potentially win the Drivers' Championship. So if you're just saying, all right, well, let's get the constructors this year and you'll get the drivers next year, you might not have a good car next year. It might be absolute crap. How do you know that you're going to have the chance again? This might be Lando's only chance. So I can understand the frustration from like hardcore Lando fans, because it's like you are potentially throwing away his only chance at winning the Drivers' Championship just because you're so concerned about constructors. But if you're so concerned about constructors, why are you even letting them race in the first place?
Do you think that the outcome of this season will determine the relationship that Lando continues to have with McLaren? Like, do you think, because I don't know...
Andrea Stella already said something that is a little weird. He was like, Oscar is the future.
Huh. That was what they were saying about Lando like a year ago.
Literally the beginning of the year, or like last year, they were saying that about Lando when he extended. And so for them to say Oscar is the future was a little odd. Especially when typically...
Did he just say
when
that?
When it comes to
or
race pace or even
context?
qualifying, Lando has been outperforming Oscar, I think, due to experience. I think they're equally good drivers.
I think my problem...
For different reasons.
I think at the end of the day, like, watching all this and taking a step back from, like, the level of, like, passion that a lot of people are having, I think my biggest takeaway is I'm not angry at the drivers. I don't think anyone is.
I don't think it's hurting their relationship.
I'm angry at the team because I don't think it's hurting Lando and Oscar's relationship with each other.
You need to make the business decision now.
I also think it's hurting Lando and Oscar's relationship with the team.
Yeah.
Because I think it's something that the pundits, especially like Ruth Busking-Divey's always said, there's a lot of trust that goes into the drivers' relationships with the people in the garage, with the people on the pit wall. Yeah. And I feel like if you have both of these drivers unsure of the clarity or just the transparency of the decisions that are being made, or even the reasoning as to why they're prioritizing one or the other, I do think something to remember, and you kind of asserted this earlier, but the Drivers' Championship doesn't come with anything. It just comes with the glory. And yes, like, it's a big deal. I mean,
it's every driver's goal.
It's every driver's goal. But in a financially, like, restricted world of what F1, like, the regulations have made it, the Constructors' Championship is, like, so much more pivotal to a team operation. And so I think it's this, like, weird moment of value where you're having this, like, clear passion of what the point of being an F1 driver is to win the championship, to like this is the peak of motorsport, the peak of any of their careers. But then their team is not sitting there and making a hard decision. Their team is hemming and hawing. And that's my decision.
I think it's
like,
risking the team, like the constructors championship, though, by
yeah,
not making a decision.
And I think
it's not even about who's the number one driver or not. It's more like, don't fight each other, because if you crash, we're not getting any points for the weekend, which means we could lose the constructors championship.
Well, and a big callback that a lot of people were bringing up this past weekend was Hungary. Was everything that the team said.
Yeah, like you need Oscar to help you win.
Like,
then why'd you let Oscar pass him at the start?
It's
Oscar should be there. In theory, if you're gonna go by that logic, Oscar should have just spent the whole race defending for Lando.
Well, I wonder too if it was a bit of like protesting from Oscar. If it was like a little bit, because I do feel like when Lando's winning, McLaren is behind Lando. When Lando's on top, McLaren's behind Lando.
When Oscar's
winning, all of a sudden it becomes this weird, where's Lando? He's not included. And it's like,
so
maybe,
it's like, why isn't Lando
maybe
in
this
front?
was Oscar's way of being like, remember me? But I don't think either of them need to prove himself. That's like the weirdest part of all this, is that I think at the end of the day, McLaren has to sit there and they need to make a bigger overarching strategy. It just seems really sloppy. It seems like they're flying by the seat of their pants, but this was something we talked about in an earlier episode when we talked about the inexperience. I mean, no one on this team, maybe there's some senior people, maybe there's some like people that have been there for 15 years, but this is a new team. This is a relatively like inexperienced team overall. I mean, it was 12, 15 years ago that McLaren was seeing action like this.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if they're just like a little bit out of their realm.
Maybe.
Because then you look at a team like, and this is something I wanted to focus on at the end of the episode, was everyone's sitting here and we're doggy piling on McLaren, and I think it's because of the importance of like the possibility of them winning both. But like, Red Bull sucked this weekend. Red Bull, like, their car didn't work. Their car couldn't steer.
If you had told me at the beginning of last season that right now McLaren could be potentially winning both championships and Red Bull is shitting the bed, I would have laughed in your face. But right now is insane.
And so that Checo comment that I brought up earlier was basically at one of the post-race interviews, Checo had this like basic moment when he was like, yeah, these are the problems that have plagued me for like this whole last season, and now they finally caught up to Max and they can't figure it out. And it's like, I feel for
it's
the
like
guy.
He ran out of fairy dust, Max.
I don't know. And then I did see, I don't know, you might have reposted this to our socials, the Adrian Newey Aston Martin thing.
Apparently Adrian Newey is going to be announced for Aston Martin this upcoming race weekend in Baku.
Wouldn't be the first
time. There's a few different news sources that posted about it. I'm not going to say it's 100% until we actually see it from the source themselves. That would explain why the upgrades and anything car related for Red Bull is shit in the bed.
Well, this is something we talked about a few weeks ago.
Yeah, we assumed that he was hands off for a while.
What's the transition period? And they'll never tell us. Like, that's the internal operations. Like, we'll never know. But what was the transition period? Did Adrian just say like peace, or has it been a slow drawback? Like, what has it been? I have no idea. But I feel like it's funny. I feel like all the seats are starting to get figured out. There's 2 more seats left. So we have V-Carb and Sauber. They're the last 2 cars that have not confirmed their final seat.
Everyone thinks that Sauber is going to go to Valtteri and V-Carb is probably going to go to Liam Lawson.
But it's interesting because I feel like there are a lot of people who signed driver's extensions, who signed things, and there are a lot of people who don't seem particularly happy where they're at.
I think we'll have to see.
Yeah.
But
I also wonder if this is just the absolute pressure of 3 teams and 3 drivers gunning for a championship, where we are just going to be flying by the seat of our pants. Because that's the thing. We didn't watch 2021.
No.
We haven't watched the prior seasons and they've been like this. Like, we watched last season, and last season was like a blowout. It was insane.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. All right. I'm trying to think if there's anything else to discuss. I think that's basically everything. We've been a little behind recently on our socials, and we are going to be catching back up. We've all been quite busy. I think we've been saying we've been busy for a really long time, and it's true, though.
I know, I'm sure you guys are getting tired of it, but we got a house. We moved. My parents are in town. we're traveling a lot. We have 9 to 5 jobs because we're normals, and
We do like to hang out with our friends because social lives are important.
then occasionally we throw in some sleep in there. So we're trying, guys. We still love to do it. It brings us a lot of joy every weekend.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
we're busy.
But next race is in Azerbaijan. It is Baku. It is a street race. And we're going to do our get ready episode for that. And we're also going to do I figure we would do a half episode where it'd be like half get ready for Baku, half get ready for IndyCar Nashville. Because we are going to not be watching Baku live because we will be at the IndyCar race here. Like I've said in past episodes, if you're going to be at the IndyCar race, let us know. Send us a DM. Maybe we'll make some friendship bracelets to hand out to people.
We're incredibly socially awkward, so if you do meet us, we apologize in advance.
Yes, that's actually a good thing to express.
Yeah. Emma clams up.
I've never, no one's ever approached me being like, are you so-and-so from the G-Forces?
No.
Absolutely not.
I'm just thinking about when we go out to places and we meet new people and we're both like, hi.
I think in in a motorsports setting, I don't think I would freak out. I think I would be like, oh my gosh, girls and boys,
men, women, children,
guys, gals, non-binary pals.
You go to IndyCar and you're just like kissing babies. They're like, who are you? They're like, Emma Gillis from the G-Forces.
Gosh, guys.
You don't listen?
Fingers crossed we have a decent weather and it's not either raining because it rains more in Nashville on average per year than it does in Seattle, or a 100-degree day, which can happen here.
Because it's basically still summer in September.
Yes. So fingers crossed we have a good weekend. And next episode you'll get both F1 and IndyCar, which is going to be exciting.
Yeah.
Make sure to follow us on all the things. Like, subscribe, hit the bell, do all the stuff.
Yeah.
And that's all. Bye, guys.
Bye.